Ava had always believed in love. She believed in it so deeply that when her boyfriend, Ethan, promised her forever, she held onto those words like a lifeline. For 3 years, they had built a life together, dreaming, planning, and standing side by side through life's struggles. She had given him everything. Then he betrayed her. It wasn't just any betrayal. He left her for her best friend. Ava never saw it coming. The signs had been there, subtle at first. The lingering glances between Ethan and Lisa, the inside jokes she wasn't a part of, the sudden late-night texts he swore were just about work, but she had trusted them both. Lisa had been her closest confidant since college. They were inseparable, until one evening, everything shattered. Ava had planned a romantic dinner for Ethan, homemade pasta, candlelight, his favorite wine. She wanted to celebrate his promotion at work, to show him how proud she was. Instead, she found out he had been celebrating with someone else. As she scrolled through her social media feed while waiting for him to come home, a notification popped up. A mutual friend had tagged Lisa in a picture. A picture of her and Ethan, holding hands in a fancy restaurant, staring into each other's eyes. Ava's heart stopped. She clicked the post, her hands shaking. The caption read, "So happy for these two lovebirds. Love always finds its way." Her stomach twisted in a way that felt physically painful. The photo was timestamped just 2 hours ago. The same time Ethan had texted her saying he was stuck in a late meeting. The realization hit her like a truck. This wasn't new. She called him. Once, twice. No answer. Then she called Lisa. Her best friend picked up on the first ring, her voice nervous, shaky. "Ava, listen." "How long?" Ava cut her off, her voice eerily calm. Lisa went silent. Then, she sighed. "A few months." Ava's vision blurred. Months. They had been sneaking around behind her back for months while she had been blindly believing in their friendship and love. She heard a muffled voice in the background. "Ethan." He was with Lisa. "I can't do this right now," Lisa muttered before hanging up. Ava sat in silence, the weight of the betrayal sinking deep into her bones. The man she had loved, the friend she had trusted, they had both thrown her away like she meant nothing. She felt humiliated. But heartbreak wasn't the only thing burning inside her. Rage. Rage at their deceit. Rage at her own blindness. Rage at the fact that she had wasted years on people who never truly valued her. She wanted to scream, cry, and break something, but she didn't. She refused to let them see her broken. Instead, she wiped her tears, stood up, and stared at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back at her wasn't just heartbroken. It was fueled by something new, something dangerous. She had spent years being the perfect girlfriend, the loyal friend, the one who was always there, always supportive. And for what? To be discarded like she was nothing? Not anymore. Ethan and Lisa thought they had won. They thought they had left her behind, moved on to something better. But what they didn't know was that Ava was about to transform. They had no idea who they had just betrayed. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she plotted. She would rise from this, stronger than ever. And she wouldn't just move on. She would make sure Ethan and Lisa regretted every single second of what they had done. Life had a funny way of working things out. And Ava had no idea that fate was about to hand her the greatest revenge opportunity she could have ever imagined. Ava didn't waste time mourning. She transformed. In the days following Ethan and Lisa's betrayal, she threw herself into work, hitting the gym harder than ever, updating her wardrobe, and realigning her focus. If Ethan had thought she would crumble, he was about to learn how wrong he was. Then fate stepped in. Ava had been working at Harrington and Company for nearly a year, a reputable marketing firm in the city. She had kept her head down, focusing on her career, never drawing much attention. But in the aftermath of the heartbreak, she worked harder than ever, driven by a hunger for success. And that's when she caught his attention. One morning, she was running late, balancing her coffee and laptop as she hurried into the sleek glass tower that housed her office. The elevator doors were about to close when a deep voice called out, "Hold that." Ava instinctively reached out, stopping the doors from shutting. The man who stepped in was Alexander Wolf, CEO of Wolf Industries, billionaire, a man whose mere presence commanded attention. He was dressed in a sharp tailored suit, a Rolex peeking from beneath his sleeve. His chiseled jawline and piercing gray eyes made him the kind of man who could own the entire city and still make people thank him for it. Ava had seen him before. His face was plastered across business magazines, articles detailing his ruthless strategies and unparalleled success. She had heard the rumors too. Cold, calculating, impossible to impress. But at that moment, in the confined space of the elevator, his gaze lingered on her just a second too long. "You're in marketing," he said, studying her intently. Ava blinked, thrown off by the abrupt statement. Yes, sir. Harrington and Company." His lips quirked slightly. "You presented at last week's campaign meeting, didn't you?" Her breath hitched. He remembered. Yes. He nodded approvingly. "You had the strongest pitch in the room." Ava felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Wolf." The elevator dinged, the doors opening. But just before she stepped out, he spoke again. "I'll be watching your work closely." She turned, meeting his gaze. Something about the way he said it wasn't just professional. It felt personal. And for the first time in weeks, Ava felt powerful. A week later, Ava was pulled into an unexpected meeting. Not with her department head, with Alexander Wolf himself. When she walked into his private office, a vast, intimidating space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, he gestured for her to sit across from him. "I need a personal marketing consultant," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Someone sharp, ambitious. I want you." Ava's heart pounded. This wasn't just a promotion. It was life-changing. Working directly under Alexander Wolf meant prestige, power, and opportunities most people could only dream of. "But why me?" she asked, needing to hear it. His gray eyes darkened with something unreadable. "Because I see potential in you. And I don't waste time on people who don't matter." Ava swallowed hard. He saw potential in her. Ethan and Lisa had thrown her away, but here was one of the most powerful men in the country, offering her a chance to rise. She didn't hesitate. "I accept." That evening, she met Lisa for coffee. Her ex-best friend had been reaching out, trying to fix things between them. Ava agreed to meet but not to reconcile. Lisa smiled weakly as Ava sat across from her. "Ava, I miss you. I hate how everything happened. Ethan and I." Ava held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it." Lisa blinked. I got promoted," Ava said casually, stirring her drink. "I'll be working directly under Alexander Wolf now." Lisa's expression faltered. "Wolf Industries?" Ava smirked, enjoying the flicker of jealousy on Lisa's face. "Yes, it's a huge opportunity. Life-changing, really?" Lisa forced a tight smile. "That's amazing. I'm happy for you." Ava leaned forward, her tone dangerously soft. "You should be. Because the woman you and Ethan left behind? She doesn't exist anymore." Lisa's smile wavered, the weight of Ava's words sinking in. Ava finished her drink, stood, and tossed a few bills on the table. "I have bigger things to focus on now. Enjoy your little romance while it lasts." And with that, she walked away, head held high, her future brighter than ever. What Lisa didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Ethan had left her for Ava's best friend. But Ava had just walked into a world far beyond his reach. And soon, he would realize just how big of a mistake he had made. Ava wasn't just moving on. She was leveling up. Working under Alexander Wolf wasn't just a promotion. It was an entry into a new world. A world of power, influence, and wealth beyond anything she had ever imagined. And she was thriving. A month into her new role, Ava had transformed yet again. No longer just the woman Ethan had betrayed. She was now a force to be reckoned with. Her confidence had sharpened. Her wardrobe had evolved from budget workwear to tailored elegance. And her skills were being honed under the mentorship of a billionaire who demanded nothing less than excellence. Alexander was known for being ruthless in business. He never tolerated mediocrity, and he never wasted time on those who didn't deliver. Yet, Ava had earned his respect. He pushed her harder than anyone else, and she thrived under the pressure. Late nights in his office, discussing strategies over whiskey, private business trips where she sat beside him in first class. Ava was no longer just another employee. She was becoming indispensable, and people noticed. One evening, Ava attended her first elite corporate gala with Alexander. She stepped into the venue in a sleek black gown, her hair styled in soft waves, every inch of her radiating confidence. She had been to work events before, but this was another level. This was the kind of room Ethan and Lisa would never be invited into. She was mingling with executives when she spotted them. Ethan and Lisa. Ava hadn't seen them since that last coffee meeting, and clearly, neither had expected to see her here. Lisa clutched Ethan's arm a little tighter, her fake smile plastered on her face, but her eyes screamed panic. Ava smirked. Good. They were nobodies in this world, barely holding on to their corporate jobs, still playing office politics while Ava was moving in circles they couldn't even dream of. Ethan recovered first, attempting his signature cocky smirk. Ava, wow, you look different. Ava tilted her head. I suppose wealth and power have that effect. Lisa forced a laugh. We were just talking about you. It's so crazy to run into you here. Ava took a slow sip of champagne. Not that crazy. This is my world now. Ethan's smile faltered. Your world. Before Ava could answer, Alexander appeared beside her. Lisa's breath hitched, and Ethan turned pale as the billionaire casually placed a hand on the small of Ava's back. It was a clear, possessive gesture. Everything all right? Alexander asked, his deep voice laced with curiosity. Ava smiled, loving how Ethan's face tightened at the sight of her standing next to one of the most powerful men in the city. Just catching up with some old friends. Alexander gave Ethan a once-over, unimpressed. I see. Then he turned back to Ava. Come, I want to introduce you to some people. Ava didn't spare Ethan and Lisa another glance. She simply turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, stunned and speechless. That night, after the gala, Ava received a text from an unknown number. Ethan, we should talk. She stared at the screen, amusement flickering through her. Oh, how the tables had turned. But Ava? She had better things to do. Ethan was nothing more than a chapter she had closed. And her story? It was just getting started. Ethan thought a simple text could bring Ava back. He had no idea who she had become. Ava ignored the message. She had no intention of speaking to the man who had betrayed her. He had traded her in for a shallow fantasy. And now that she was shining brighter than ever, he wanted back in? Absolutely not. But she wasn't done yet. The next day, she walked into Alexander Wolf's office, her confidence radiating like an impenetrable shield. He glanced up from his desk, smirking slightly. You seem particularly motivated today. Ava smiled. I am. He leaned back, intrigued. Tell me. So she did. She told him everything. How Ethan had betrayed her, how Lisa had stabbed her in the back, and how they had both assumed she would simply crumble. Alexander listened, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was silent for a moment before finally saying, You don't strike me as the type to seek pity. Ava smirked. I'm not. He nodded, pleased. Good. Then tell me, what do you want? Ava met his gaze without hesitation. I want power. I want success. And I want them to watch as I become everything they told me I could never be. Alexander's smirk deepened. Now that I can help with. A few weeks later, Ava was officially promoted to vice president of marketing. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. A woman so young climbing so fast? It was unheard of. But she hadn't just climbed. She had soared. And that's when Ethan and Lisa started to panic. Ethan called. Repeatedly. He texted. He even showed up at a high-profile event Ava attended, trying to act casual as he bumped into her. Ava, he started, flashing the same smile she had once fallen for. Can we talk? She sipped her champagne, giving him a bored glance. About what? He hesitated. Look, I know things ended badly, but, Ava chuckled, cutting him off. Ended badly? Ethan, you cheated on me with my best friend. I think ended badly is an understatement. He ran a hand through his hair. I was an idiot. She raised an eyebrow. I won't argue with that. His jaw tightened. I miss you, Ava. We had something real. Ava set her glass down, crossing her arms. Real? The only real thing that happened was me realizing that I was wasting my time on you. Ethan looked desperate now, his charm failing him. I made a mistake. Lisa. She wasn't who I thought she was. Ava smirked. There it was. Lisa had dumped him. She leaned in, lowering her voice. You threw me away for her, Ethan. And now? You want me back because she left you? He didn't answer, but his silence was all the confirmation she needed. Ava shook her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't want you back. In fact, I don't even think about you. Ethan's face fell. Ava, please. Before he could say another word, Alexander walked up behind her, resting a hand on her waist. Everything all right? He asked, his presence towering over Ethan. Ava turned slightly, tilting her head. Oh, perfectly fine. Just an old mistake trying to find relevance again. Ethan's face burned with humiliation. Alexander chuckled, then turned to Ethan. It's funny, he mused. Some people don't realize when they've lost. Ethan swallowed hard. He knew he had lost. Without another word, he turned and walked away, defeated. Ava exhaled slowly, feeling the last remnants of her past disappear. Alexander leaned down, murmuring near her ear. I have a meeting with investors in 5 minutes. Join me. She smiled, looping her arm through his. Wouldn't miss it. As they walked away, Ava didn't look back. Ethan had been her past. But this was her future, and she had never felt more powerful. Ava had never felt more in control of her life. She had spent years giving her love and loyalty to people who had discarded her. But now, she was surrounded by power, influence, and success. She had become untouchable. Her name was on every major marketing success story in the industry. Vice President of Marketing at Wolf Industries was not just a title, it was a statement. And it was driving Ethan and Lisa insane. One evening, as Ava sat in her office overlooking the city skyline, Alexander walked in, tossing a glossy magazine onto her desk. She picked it up and smirked. It was an article about her, the woman who took over corporate marketing and took no prisoners. You're making waves, Alexander mused, leaning against her desk. They're calling you unstoppable. Ava set the magazine down, locking eyes with him. Good. He tilted his head, a hint of amusement dancing in his gaze. Have you heard from them? Ava didn't have to ask who he meant. Ethan and Lisa had been reaching out nonstop. They don't exist to me anymore, she said coolly. Alexander smirked. I love that about you. Then, as if the universe wanted to put a bow on her revenge, she received a call from Lisa. Ava let it go to voicemail. Then another, and another. Finally, curiosity got the best of her. She played the latest voicemail, Lisa's desperate voice filling the room. Ava, please, I need to talk to you. Ethan, he's not who I thought he was. He used me, Ava. He's broke and he cheated on me. I should have never. Ava deleted the message. It was too late for regret. Lisa had betrayed her for a man who wasn't even worth it. And now she wanted Ava's sympathy? Ava chuckled, shaking her head. Pathetic. And Ethan? His downfall had been even better. He had quit his stable corporate job after getting comfortable with Lisa's lavish lifestyle, assuming she'd always support him. Then Lisa dumped him. Now he was struggling to find work, his reputation ruined, drowning in debt, and desperately trying to win back the woman he had once tossed aside. Too bad for him, Ava had already won. One night, at another elite corporate event, Ava caught sight of Ethan across the room. He looked different. Tired, stressed, out of place in a cheap suit that didn't fit him right. He saw her too, and for a moment, their eyes locked. Ava simply raised her champagne glass in a silent toast. Ethan swallowed hard, realizing that the woman he had once abandoned was now the one standing in a world he could never belong to. She turned, stepping toward Alexander, who was waiting for her with a smirk. "You ready?" he asked. Ava linked her arm through his, smiling. "Always." As they walked away, she didn't give Ethan another glance. She was done with her past. She was living the dream, and watching Ethan and Lisa crumble, that was just the cherry on top. Ava had moved on, but the past had a way of lingering just long enough to ensure satisfaction. Watching Ethan and Lisa collapse under the weight of their own choices had been entertaining, but it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about the life she had built, the power she had claimed, and the unshakable confidence that had become her new identity. One evening, Alexander took her out to a private rooftop dinner overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered in the distance, reflecting the lights of the empire she had helped him expand. He raised a glass of whiskey, smirking as he studied her. "You know, you've done more than just rise to the top." Ava arched a brow. "Oh? And what's that?" "You've proven that the best revenge isn't just success," he said, tilting his glass toward her. "It's knowing you never needed them to begin with." Ava smirked, clinking her glass against his. "That's the truth. They were untouchable, and it felt incredible." The true poetic justice came when Lisa showed up at Ava's office. It was unannounced, desperate, and a complete disaster. Security had almost turned her away, but Ava, curious to see just how far Lisa had fallen, let her in. Lisa sat across from her, looking nothing like the polished woman who had once stolen Ethan away. She looked worn down, her confidence shattered. "Ava," Lisa started, wringing her hands. "I just wanted to talk." Ava leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Talk about what?" Lisa swallowed hard. "I know I messed up. I was selfish. And Ethan, he was never what I thought. I lost everything." "Ava." Ava tilted her head, pretending to think. "Sounds familiar." Lisa winced. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I miss you. I miss our friendship. I wish I could take it all back." Ava took a slow breath, then stood, walking to the window. "You want to take it back?" she repeated, turning to face Lisa. "Like this is something that can just be erased?" Lisa's lips parted, but no words came out. Ava smiled, not out of kindness, but out of knowing she had truly won. "I used to think I needed closure," she admitted. "But standing here now, I realize I don't need anything from you. Not an apology. Not regret. Nothing." Lisa's eyes glistened, her hands tightening on her purse. "So, that's it." Ava nodded. "That's it." Lisa stood slowly, nodding as she wiped a tear from her eye. "I guess I deserved that." Ava didn't answer. She didn't need to. As Lisa walked out of her office and out of her life for good, Ava turned back to the window, watching the city that now belonged to her. She had already won. That night, as she walked into Alexander's penthouse, he was waiting for her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To another victory?" he asked, offering her one. Ava took it, smirking, to never looking back. As their glasses clinked, she knew this wasn't just the end of an old chapter. It was the beginning of the best one yet. Ava had finally closed the chapter on her past, and as she stepped into a future filled with endless possibilities, she realized something profound. She had built this life entirely on her own. Ethan and Lisa were nothing but distant memories now, fragments of a version of herself she no longer recognized. She had transformed into something far more powerful. Months passed, and Ava's success continued to skyrocket. She had not only solidified her role at Wolf Industries, but she had also begun carving out a name for herself beyond the company. She was no longer just Alexander Wolf's protégé. She was becoming a powerhouse in her own right. At a high-profile business summit, she delivered a keynote speech on the future of marketing in the luxury industry. Cameras flashed, journalists hung onto her every word, and investors scrambled to work with her. She was no longer the woman people overlooked. She was the woman everyone wanted to know. After her speech, she stepped down from the stage, only to be approached by Alexander himself. "Flawless," he murmured, handing her a glass of champagne. "You're not just a rising star anymore, Ava. You're a force." She smirked, clinking her glass against his. "I always was. People just didn't see it before." He chuckled, leaning in slightly. "Their loss." Ava glanced around the event, her eyes scanning the elite crowd. And then, as if fate wanted to send her one final gift, she saw Ethan. He was there as someone's plus one, standing awkwardly at the edge of the room, clearly out of place. His once confident demeanor was gone, replaced with something uncertain, almost regretful. She held his gaze for only a second before turning back to Alexander, dismissing Ethan like he was nothing more than a shadow in the background. Ethan had once been her whole world. Now, he wasn't even a footnote. As the night wore on, Ava found herself on the rooftop terrace, overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, and she felt the weight of everything she had achieved settling in. Alexander joined her, standing beside her in comfortable silence. "So," he finally said, "what's next?" Ava smiled, taking a slow sip of her champagne. "More," he smirked. "More what?" She turned to face him, confidence radiating from her. "More success, more power, more everything." Alexander studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then let's get it." As they clinked glasses once again, Ava knew without a doubt. She had won. Not just against Ethan, not just against Lisa. She had won against every version of herself that had ever doubted her worth. And this was only the beginning.